So you may remember, of course, during the last previous US, election, a lot of people were putting out warning signs about Project 2025. We even looked at some of the stuff in Project 2025, and it is still very, very worrying because while, shall we say, not everything of Project 2025 has been fulfilled, a lot of the people who they wanted to get into the administration for Project 2025 are in there doing some of those very things that Project 2025 wanted to do. And that is incredibly worrying. And the damage that would be doing to some of like the services, the basic functions of governments, as we've seen some of the damage that DOGE has done. Like I say, go check out the guys on the Bing podcast because they talk about some of that stuff quite a lot. So go check them out on that. But yeah, it is incredibly worrying. And it is something we should be very, very worried about ourselves because guess what? Guess what? Turns out now that this dark money from America, as we've always warned about, is coming over to here in the UK. And guess what? It is being a name now attached to it. A name I fear we're probably going to have to get quite used to at least knowing because Reform UK are teaming up with a think tank called Resolute 1850. Yeah, you heard that right. Resolute 1850. This is exactly like Project 2025. This group, again, of shadowy individuals are going in, giving Reform a lot of money, saying, this is what you want to do. And of course, one of their biggest asks is to turn the NHS from a public healthcare provider into a private insurance-based model. So remember, when a lot of people are turning around saying Reform UK don't want to turn the NHS into a private model, just ignore the fact that Farage is on video saying that. You've now got this group that is now backing and funding reform, saying we want to turn, the NHS into a private insurance-based system. So let's dig into this then, shall we? So before we do get on into this, please do remember to click, of course, on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, don't forget to ring the bell as well so you get notifications of when we do a new video, when we go live. There is also the links down below for the Patreon page. There's the Buy Me a Coffee link. We can Buy Me Coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the YouTube membership down as well. So thank you very much to everyone who does help and support the channel that way. So let's crack on then into this because I think this is something we're going to have to watch. We're going to have to be very vigilant of because if you've seen my membership video, you probably know why we are probably even more concerned about this. So on into this. So this comes from the Yorkshire Bylines. So following his party's, of course, success at the local elections, Farage is now delivered a very stark warning to public sector workers in his victory speech in Durham, saying those working on climate change, diversity, and inclusion, or just simply from home, need to seek alternative careers very, very quickly. With no legal powers to actually back up that threat, it was a very performative but deliberate act. In December, of course, of just last year, Resolute 1850 Limited was launched in the UK. Again, as I said, get used to thinking about this word. This is something we all very, very, very much need to be worried about. With now a think tank soon to, of course, be launched from funds from MAGA, American big tech, and even the US religious right already now pledged. It seeks to now use reform as a vessel to bring Project 2025 style policies to the UK. This is why we should also be looking at getting campaign funding reform in so that this type of stuff cannot happen, that you cannot have outside money coming in to influence our politics. It should be done. It needs to be looked at. There is, of course, something committee forming about this, possibly early next year, I think, or at least end of this year, I think, can't remember exactly, should absolutely be looked at. So, its success or otherwise, of course, depends on the British people. The next general election, they will either vitally vote like Canada or Australia, or Argentina or Hungary. So, Farage, of course, threats to Durham council workers are very much in line with his pre-election pledges to establish DOGE units modelled on Musk's and Trump's so-called Department of Government Efficiency. Their aim is to slash council spending and target DEI roles, net zero policies, and work from home arrangements. Resolute 1850 also now aims to try and professionalize the party to help them achieve these goals. Well, as we've already said, I don't see how they are going to slash council spending when they've already been through 15 years of austerity. Like, there is just nothing to cut without really destroying services. And we are possibly going to see that very soon, what happens in Kent. Like I say, they're still desperately trying to find all the gold they can in Kent with their Doge stuff. But so far, they didn't save even anything. We've been through that. It's basically nothing what they've found so far. What will happen when they bring out their full Doge plan? I'm not expecting a lot, and neither should anyone else, to be honest, at this point. So, according to, of course, their entry at Companies House, the directors are Jonathan Brown, the former CEO of Reform UK Limited, David Lilly, and, of course, Mark Thompson. The latter two now have ties to the energy sector and, of course, like Farage, metal trading. And although the party now has denied any links with think tanks, it is understood that Farage and Tice have also met with the founders of Resolute 1850 and that they will be based at Millbank Tower along with Reform UK. Kind of odd that, this think tank that you have nothing to do with just also happens to be sharing your premises. So, sources who, of course, spoke to the Financial Times claim that name will most probably likely change. But the symbolism, of course, cannot be understated. HMS Resolute was a British ship launched in 1850, which became trapped in the Arctic ice, only to be later recovered by an American vessel, after which its timbers were transformed into a huge 590-kilogram desk, which has now served as the desk of US presidents in the Oval Office ever since. A presentation document seen by the Financial Times shows the aims of Resolute 1850 include the reduction of state-funded services to shrink the public sector, opposition to DEI and net zero initiatives, and transitioning the NHS to an insurance-based system. So once again, remember, guys, when you tell people this is what Reform want to do, remind them. Farage has said that publicly several times. He denies it now, of course, but he said it several times. Why are you going to believe him now that he's denying this now? Not only that, you've now got this Resolute 1850 that his main aims wants to turn the NHS into an insurance-based system. So in pursuit of these policies, Resolute 1850 has now rapidly raised £100 million in funding pledges from American MAGA to big tech interests, and currently now is supporting the Trump presidency along with UK-based donors. According to the presentation document, Resolute 1850 is also sourcing donations from American religious rights and also prominent socially conservative politicians. In particular, those, of course, about restricting abortion are to be expected if the program is implemented. As a taster, J.D. Vance, who authored the foreword for Project 2025, signaled out the UK in his Munich speech back in February, citing buffer zones outside abortion clinics in the UK as evidence now of repression of free speech. So, once again, they're coming after abortion. And we said it when that happened, when the Supreme Court overturned abortion, they'd be coming for Europe next. We saw it immediately after a Tory stood up miraculously and said this. And nothing to do with the fact that, but it's something we've got to be very, very careful of. Very, very careful of indeed. This is the reality. And I say this now to all the people who are like excited about voting for a Jeremy Corbyn party. It's not going to win. It will never win, but you run the risk of allowing this to happen. Like, you run the risk of allowing this to happen. You generally do. This is the danger that we now face. Why on earth would you ever allow this to happen by voting for another party that you know is not going to win? That you know not even going to have enough representation in Parliament to be able to potentially stop, say, a vote on transitioning the NHS to an insurance-based system. Is that the risk you guys want to run? Sounds like it. Sounds like it. So, also, so back to this. Resolute 1850 does also hope now further its aims through a role in a broader policy development and testing. It will support Reform MPs and personnel by briefing them on effective arguments and rebuttals now to criticism. They also now seek to change opinion around key issues to provide technocratic competence. There is a website for now. It seems to have a coming soon page. It does, however, have a mission statement, stronger transatlantic relationships, and more effective governance, driving positive change through data-driven insights. Is there a whiff of Musk in the air? We'll see. The document, of course, acknowledges that its, quote, Thatcherite instincts go against the statist ones of their base and culture wars, have thus far proven a valuable tool to bypass inconvenient policy discussions. The inflated threat now of men of fighting age arriving on the beaches, spotted by the intrepid Farage with his handy set of binoculars, or now even imagined war on motorists in the name of net zero, or hordes of trans people rampaging through the nation's toilets, intent now on evil deeds, have proven themselves now to be a highly effective passion-inflaming entry gate into far-right politics, and could ultimately now provide a result now in signing away some of their rights to now universal healthcare or even other protections offered to them by membership of the European Court of Human Rights. And again, this is what we've got to be careful for. Culture wars, as I always say, massive smokescreen. When you fight these culture wars, you are not fighting on the real issues that should be needed to fight. It is a smokescreen. It shouldn't be fought on. Well, don't get me wrong, some of this stuff is important. You get pulled into this stuff, you ignore fighting the other stuff as well. Not that this stuff isn't also important, but it's a smokescreen to, like I say, to achieve stuff like this. You know? Got to be careful. Got to be careful about this. So, this is, I think, the big question. Can Resolute 1850 actually really succeed in the UK? Money will, of course, be no problem for reform, which it is clearly now hoping to ride the wave of Trump's victory in the US to try and harness the support they've achieved today to try and lead them on a possession now of real power. This support has now often been a protest vote against the Conservatives and Labour, dismissed as a uniparty by reform supporters who want drastic change. The irony is that Farage has held recent meetings with Liz Truss for policy advice and seems to be, in economic terms, offering now more of the same. The change that reform voters seek is ultimately now to be offered by the mega-rich American businessmen. A scan of all Twitter accounts recently do reveal that some reform voters now to be violently racist and susceptible to conspiracy theories, which has on occasion been reflected in the choice now of their election candidates. Especially we've seen that over in Doncaster. Others now are electorally lost, and the genuine hope for reform, as of course, will listen to working class communities and try and protect the NHS and workers' rights to tackle the general lack of opportunity and to address the housing crisis. Again, reform will never listen to that. But that is what some of these people genuinely believe, that reform is somehow listening to that and going to tackle that. They are not going to do that. When the TUC, of course, exposed Farage's voting records in all these areas, supporters in his constituency in Clacton were generally shocked. It is, of course, worth noting that one of Resolute's 1850's first initiatives is to oppose Labour's house building plans, not because they are against building homes, but because out of the fear that this policy will provide popular amongst potential reform voters. Shock horror. So, and this is also a big different thing, because the Conservatives here and Conservatives in America, as we pointed out before, very, very different. They are not the same. So, as with MAGA in the States, Reform's working class base is economically far removed now from the multimillionaire leaderships, and the conflicts of interest are now sure to arise. Reform voters are more culturally right wing and than economically so. And though the culture wars can at least divert some voters from pondering the economic factors for a while, it will not last forever. And most Britons are very proud of the welfare state that the US has never had. In addition to this, the British electorate are not affected by ultra religious messaging of the type seen in the US. In the UK, churchgoers are now more likely to vote centre left or even left than right wing. Again, big difference between the UK and the US in that. Resolute 1850's message will, of course, have to be very much adapted now for the British electorate, and the question to us whether the financial backers will actually accept this is, of course, yet to be answered. Again, very true. Musk's, of course, reaction to Farage not endorsing Tommy Robinson because he has understood the British electorate better than Musk might be a sign as how things may play out. Very true indeed. So, and again, this has also been this as well. I think this is the other thing as well. Doge, been there, done that. Also, Britain has suffered years of austerity and cuts. We've already had our Doge moment thanks to George Osborne. There is, of course, no appetite to revisit that. There is no money left to skim. Reform's control of these current 10 councils, including Durham, 2 mayoralties, may provide a platform to test all these Resolute 1850 agenda. But council budgets, now already strained for after 15 years of cuts, very offer little room for even significant savings without impacting essential services like social care. Like I say, Doge is not going to work. Just not going to work at all. When you take austerity, which is basically what Doge is, it's not going to work. It's not going to work at all unless they start firing people, which I think ultimately is on the cards. Or what they do is they really cut back on hiring people. Like, they don't hire anyone new. They basically say, you aren't going to hire anyone. We're going to do a hiring freeze for like the next 4 years. Then what do you do? Because obviously inevitably people leave. Maybe they'd go and get a new job somewhere else. Maybe they're sick, maybe they're retired. Then what? What ends up happening if you're, you know, bear in mind that I think the average time most people spend in a job is between like 3 to 5 years, average time. That is going to be very drastic if they do a hiring freeze. I suspect they might do a hiring freeze. I really do think they will go for a hiring freeze. So, yeah, I do think that is something we need to worry about. Resolute 1850. Lock that into your memory banks and remember it, because I have a feeling we're going to be hearing maybe a lot about Resolute 1850. Certainly in the coming years, definitely, if it doesn't change its name. So who knows? We'll see. We'll be keeping an eye on this as always. But as always, click the like and share button. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time. And I've said that far too many times.